Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. Today we have a new unboxing for you, and this box is really big, that's why we're on this very wide angle. Today we're going to be unboxing high grade 261. This is the Psycho Gundam MK II. Now we already have the Psycho Gundam that was high grade 49 or 50, I can't remember, it was one of those numbers. And it's in about a box about half this size, so this is quite a bit bigger despite the designs being pretty similar. Like the transformation of the Mark II and the original Psycho Gundam is very similar, but this has a lot more colors on it, and I believe that's the main reason why this box is so much bigger, because from the promotional images and everything I've seen so far, this kit looks fully color accurate out of the box. So I'll be very interested to open this up, see how color accurate it is, take a look at the runners, and maybe even take a look at the sticker sheet and see what the size of that is. This is a huge box. This is about the same size box as the Nightingale or the Destroy Gundam, so this should be standing similar to the Destroy Gundam in terms of height. So without wasting any more of your time, I'm going to put the camera up and we're going to take a look at the Psycho Gundam Mark II from Zeta Gundam and Double Zeta Gundam, and we're going to go through the runners in alphabetical order. So before we go into the A runner, I just wanted to say that there are 34 runners total in this entire box. That's quite a lot of runners, and only a handful of those runners are action-based runners. So a good majority of this 34 runner are all parts to build this Psycho Gundam Mark II. So here we have the A runner of the Psycho Gundam Mark II, and like most A runners, this is a multicolored runner. So over here on the right we have a dark purple, over here on the left in the middle we have this brighter purple, down here in the lower left hand side we have some pinks, which I assume is going to be for the sensors on the face, and in the top left we have some blacks, which is the actual face itself. And getting into these pieces here, like for instance this is the front of the torso here, and we can see that nice panel down there. And here we have the underneath of the torso, and we can see that there's some raised panel line edges here. So if you wanted to paint that, you could, to give it that subframe, truss framing type of look. And same down here with this central torso piece. These two pieces here go on either side of the front chest, and we can see this kind of interesting lightning bolt shape here molded into the actual part itself, and that's for color separation. So there's a big red piece that goes up in here, and then a yellow piece that goes into this triangle area. So going down the middle we have some miscellaneous joints, but directly in the center we have two pieces for a head. Now this is the destroyed head, so there is a head that is half destroyed, and then of course you have your typical completed head, because in Zeta Gundam, the head does get destroyed. So we have a nice battle damaged head there. So you'll definitely want to do some weathering there. And we can see some, so you definitely want to do some weathering on this piece. And you can see some mechanical detailing there chipped away. Same thing here with these hoses. So these hoses you're going to want to paint, because this is not going to look too great in this purplish color. We have some more pieces down here. I assume these are for the neck. Here we have the upper top portion of the completed head, and then here we have the upper top portion of the destroyed head, and we can see where the laser has kind of melted all that metal there. Some really nice weathering molded into this actual piece itself. We have this little cheek section here for the destroyed head. In the center here, these four pieces, we do have these side skirts, and there are some thrusters that go into these holes in a yellow color, so it's very nice that these are all color separated. If this came out around the same time as the Psycho Gundam Mark I, none of this would have been color separated, so it's really nice that this is all separated. Here we have the back of the head for the completed head, and then the back of the head for the destroyed head, and we can tell it's the destroyed head because all this side piece here is missing. Here we have the front of the completed face, and then the front of the destroyed face, and we can see, if I put my finger up to it, that it is color separated for the eyes, which is a very nice touch. I do appreciate that Bandai's been doing that a lot more lately. Here we have both sides of the completed head, and then we have the one side of the completed head that's not destroyed. Here we have two sensors. This one is for the destroyed head, and this one's for the completed head. And then down here we have the color separated eyes. So again, this is for the completed head and this is for the destroyed head. Taking a quick glance underneath, I don't notice any undergating and there's not really any interior detailing other than on this destroyed head here with this hose there. And then we have a little bit of detailing underneath on the side skirt, so we can see all that venting in there, and then we can see that sort of panel hatch there. All around, Runner A is a pretty standard runner, but it's very nice that it's fully color separated for the Psycho Gundam Mark II, so I'm very happy that this kit came out later in the HGUC line, as color separation became more of a standard, because if this came out around the same time as the Psycho Gundam or even around high grade 100, a lot of this would still have to be corrected with paint and with stickers. The detailing on this runner is really nice. I do really like this raised sort of truss framing here on the torso and all the panel line details here on the side skirt, the hatch there, and then the vents there on the side. And we have some nice panel line detailings there on the bottom portion of the cheeks. We've got some very nice details here and a lot of sort of one-off parts, like a lot of parts just for the head. So let's move on to Runner B. So here we have two B runners. We have B2 on top here, which is just a subsect of B1. This runner here is molded in that type of lavender purple type of color, and it's just all big pieces. So up here, we can see that this is for the top of the waist section here, and we can see all this nice panel lining there on the top of this waist section. And that looks really, really nice, and that's really tempting for me to paint because you could go really crazy with all the details here. So if you wanted to paint that hatch there and there and there gray, that would look really good. And then if you wanted to do this type of truss framing up here in a different gray, that would also look really, really good as well. Over here we have some joint parts. And then down here we have two halves of the lower waist. So this is where the legs plug into. And again, some really nice detailing here. Like we have all this piping to the left there, and then we have these sort of piston joints to the right. So that looks really, really nice. Down here we have some movable joints with a molded piston in there, which looks really good. And again, some more hatches and panels on the inside there. And then once again, more hatches and panels on this tiny, tiny piece. So they really did add a lot of extra detail to this kit that didn't necessarily need to be there. Down here we have some joint pieces, nothing really crazy to write home about. And then here, I'm sure this caught your attention right away, we have this massive piece for the shield, which then turns into a sort of wing flap in its transformed mode. Down here we have the top of the feet sections. So this piece goes on top of this piece, and there's like a yellow ring that goes all the way around and cuts into this cutout area. So that looks really, really nice. Up here we have the upper thigh section, and although we're not going to really see this too much because of the skirt, we do have some nice panels and hatches here on the side, which looks really good. We also have this see-through piece here, so I'm really kind of hoping that we get like a little bit of the frame to poke through, because that would also look really nice. On the back side, we don't have any interior detailing, and we don't really have any undergating, so let's move on to Runner C. So here we have Runner C, and it's another multicolored runner. Over here on the right, we have that bright purple. In the center, we have that darker purple. In the bottom left down here, we have the red. In the top left up there, we have yellow. So these four purple parts up here are for the shoulder armor. You can see this circular cutout here for the thruster. Got some nice panel lining across the side there. There's quite a bit more panel lining on this kit over even the Destroy Gundam that we saw last year. On the back side of the shoulder armor, we do have some interior type of truss framing there, which looks really nice. If you took the time to paint that, that would look great. Down here we have some miscellaneous armor pieces with a little bit of panel lining there and like a small hatch there. And then here we have the top of the hands, again with some panel lining at the top and at the bottom there. Down directly in the center, as we switch to this darker purple, we have these parts here, these type of sloped parts with some nice truss framing on that. And they look like four of the same parts, only some have some cutouts here. So this probably has something to do with the transformation gimmick. Over here on the red, we have some armor pieces that go onto the sides of the forearm here. So we can see these sides aren't hollow and these sides are hollow, so this must have something to do with the transformation gimmick. And these are on the inside, those are on the outside. Looking down here, we even have some little hatch nubs on the end there of that red piece, which is unexpected, but nice. Over here we have some venting In the center here, we have these 4 pieces, which I believe to be upper bicep forearm pieces. And that's just an educated guess. I didn't go into the manual yet. And then here we have these armor pieces, but I wanted to point out this interior panel lining on the inside there. That looks really, really nice. And all these yellow pieces up here, these are just thrusters that go throughout the body. On the back side, all the interior detailing is on the shoulder armor. There's really nothing else here for interior detailing. And there's nothing here for undergating either. So let's move on to runner D. Here we have 2 D runners, and they're molded in that darker type of purple color. And this is a pretty low-key runner. There's not a ton on here that's too different. It's a lot of copy-paste parts. Like all down here, we have the reflector bits. And up here, we have the thrusters for the reflector bits. So we're only going to look at one of these runners because they're identical. And we'll start with the bigger pieces in the top left. These hose areas over here are for the bicep. So again, some nice paint potential here if you wanted to do some silver and some gray down there. I think that would look really good with this purpley color. Have these pieces here, not necessarily sure where they may go. My guess is the forearm kind of at the bottom of the bicep joint. And then here we have some joint sections here with just a tad of panel lining there and there. Down here we have these smaller pieces, so these small pieces slot in to these pieces there, and then some more joint pieces here. But all along the bottom we have the reflector bits, which should be kind of gray on the flaps here rather than this purple color. So there is some potential for paint correction there. We have some joints here, and then like a small little panel and joint there. And then here we have the reflector bits again, but in their stowed position. So these reflector bits must stay somewhere on the Psycho Gundam when not deployed in this configuration. There are small holes here on the reflector bits, and that should be for the action base, so that way you can display the reflector bits fully deployed. On the backside here, we have the backside of the reflector bits, and they have some nice panel lines on them. So this is probably going to take you a little bit to panel line all these little notches throughout all these reflector bits across these 2 runners. And that's primarily it. There's no undergating here. It's just all reflector bit pieces primarily on these 2 D runners. Here we have the lone E runner. This is all in a light gray color, and this is just pieces for the movable hands. This is specific to the Psycho Gundam MK II, as we can read up here on the runner. So this isn't copy pasted from the Destroy Gundam or the original Psycho Gundam. And if you've seen one movable hand runner, then you've kind of seen them all. This is very similar to older Perfect grades, the Destroy Gundam. Not sure about the Psycho Gundam MK I as I haven't built it, but it's just a movable hand runner. So what's nice is we have all this detail in here for the barrels of the laser emitters at the tips of the fingers. That looks really, really nice. But cleaning up these parts is going to be a little bit tedious. To be expected, there's no detailing on the backside, and there is no undergating on runner E1, so this is just a movable hand. Let's move on to runner F. Here we have runner F, and this is primarily big armor pieces that are sort of one-offs. So this big piece here is a sort of hood, if you will, that goes up and over the head in the transformed mode. We have the skirts down here. We have some backpack pieces here and the front sort of crotch piece. And then back here is more hoses and things for the sort of hood, if you will. We're just going to call it the hood for the sake of this video. But we can see this big cutout here, and that's just a big color separated piece. Not a ton of outside detail on these pieces here. But on the inside, we have all these hatches on the circumference and then down the center. And it looks like that seam line is going to be baked into the hatches and panels here. So that seam line is going to butt up against this. So you could panel line down there and basically hide the seam line as a panel line, which is very nice forward thinking from Bandai. I love it when they do that with seam lines because it means you don't really have to mess around with glue too much. I don't know if that rings the same for the top side of it, so we'll have to find that out in the review. Down here we have some hoses, and depending on where they land on the mobile suit itself, you may want to paint it just so these stick out a little bit more against the armor itself. Down here we have this type of joint piece, so if I really had to take an educated guess, this probably fits within the hood and comes up and over the head. So this is probably a joint piece for this hood type of movement. And again, we have some nice hoses here, which that would look very good in silver. And then over there we have some type of truss framing on that little joint piece. Down here we have this massive piece, and I'm pretty sure this is the rear skirt, and we have a ton of nice surface detail here, a lot of hatches to panel line on the back of the skirt here. That looks good. And there's also some on the inside, so we kind of have that venting on the inside there, and then this panel hatch up there. So here we have the front of the skirt, and we have this circular cutout here, I believe for like a beam emitter / thruster, and a little bit of panels and hatches to panel line on the front there. And then on the inside here, we have all sorts of truss framing on the inside of the skirt. So this is going to flip up and over into this piece. And this looks really, really fantastic with all this detailing here. This is almost similar to real grade levels of detailing, which is kind of crazy because the other previous really large mobile suits we've gotten in 1/144 scale have stayed very close to anime accuracy. They haven't really added a ton of surface detail to it. Like, that was one of my things that was a little lackluster with the Destroy Gundam, is we have all this space and all this real estate and not a ton of surface detail on it. So it looks like they really stepped it up a lot for this Psycho Gundam Mark II. We even have this little pipe and vent down there. That looks really good. Over here we have the front piece for the waist, a little bit of panel lining there, and then we have some side panel armors. We already talked about the interior detail of the rear skirt, but there's nothing on the rest of this runner, and there is no undergating on this runner either. So here we have the lone G runner in this brighter purple color. At the bottom we have pieces for the lower legs, and at the top we have pieces for the torso. So taking a quick look at two halves of the leg, we have all these pieces up here for the beam emitters / thrusters. Someone will have to correct me in the comments exactly what they are. I'm pretty sure they're beam emitters because it's a very destructive mobile suit. Over here on the inside of the leg, we have some venting there in a purple color. And here on the side, we have these little panels which look like a sticker might go in there, but there is no sticker for it. And checking the line art, there's no separate colors for it. So this is literally just there for added panel detailing, which is very nice. Same with all this throughout the whole kit itself. This large, kind of weird looking, almost music note cutout here is for the yellow piece to poke through for some color separation. We have a nice panel up here on this side with some really nice chiseled panel lines throughout the whole kit, but following the actual contour of the design itself is a really nice touch. I like how they did that there with that leg piece. Up here we have the front chest piece with some nice panel line detailing throughout. We got these hatches down the center. And then on the front here, we have this kind of weird looking slot, and that is for some color separated piece. So a red piece is going to slot in there for perfect color separation. This looks like the center chest area, so that's where the neck is going to go. And we still have some slight panel line detailing there. And then here we have the back half of the torso armor. So again, some nice panel line detailing there on the actual back itself. And then down here in the lower torso section, we have a nice panel there. On the back side, on the lower portion of the legs itself, we have some truss framing down there with some interior panels to panel line. We're probably not going to see that, so if you didn't want to panel line that, you could ignore it. But if you wanted to go through and paint it, make a really detailed build, you could paint that and do that as well. No undergating on Runner G, and a really nice, well-detailed kit that took some nice liberties with the legs up here. I really love what they've done with the surface detail on this kit. I just think it looks really, really, really good. I just especially like how they followed all the contours of the armor with the additional details and panel lines that they added to this design itself. It's really nice looking. Here we have two H runners, and this is primarily runners for the legs. So here we have two sections here for the feet, which take up a big footprint of this runner. We have the front shin armor here, and then the back end of the shin armor down here. We have this little cuff area for the ankle. That's pretty much most of what this runner is. This is mostly feet pieces. Starting with these more uninteresting pieces, we do have 4 of these type of circular pieces here that are going to be used to prop up those beam emitters on the actual armor itself. But taking a look at the foot, we have all of this detailing on the actual foot itself, which looks really, really, really good. And I know a lot of guys are going to want to paint these and really pull all these details out, more so than just panel lining all these panels down here under the foot. Here we have the back side of the front kind of kneecap armor there with some nice panel lining on that. We have a very large armor piece here and probably the bottom of the foot thruster there. if I had to guess. Over here we have some shoulder armor pieces. So this is like a armor flap on the edge of the shoulder armor. Here we have this type of cuff that goes around the foot on top of this piece here. And we have a little bit of panel line detailing within the foot. The foot is obviously static. It's all molded as one piece, so we're not going to get any toe bends or anything. So all the articulation is simply going to be coming from the actual ankle itself. So hopefully there's a lot of articulation here in this ankle joint. That way we can pull off some nice, big, kind of wide, imposing poses with the Psycho Gundam MK II. On the reverse side, we don't have any undergating, but within this shoulder armor, I believe this is, I know for a fact this is shoulder armor, but I'm not exactly entirely sure if this is. But either way, there's still a lot of interior detailing there, with all that truss framing on the inside. So again, this is a painter's dream where they can just kind of go crazy with all these details, paint it, and pull all those details up. We have a really nice, well-detailed H-runner here, especially on the back end of the shoulder armors, the bottom of this foot. And with this kind of ankle knee piece here, I'm really hoping that the seam line can be blended as a panel line, because I think that would look really nice as well. Here we can see the switch gating for the gigantic arm unit that came out with the Advance of Zeta release of the big arm unit last year. So we can see where they would turn this runner on or off to produce the shoulder armor for that release. So when that gigantic arm unit came out for Advance of Zeta, that's kind of when our brains started churning a little bit. We're like, okay, we're getting a Psycho Gundam MK II pretty soon. So little Easter egg for you there on Runner H. Here we have two identical eye runners, again in that brightish purple color. So we're only going to look at one. And here we have the back side of the shield. So that larger type of darker purple goes on this side here. And then on the inside, we have all this truss framing. So again, this is another painter's dream type of piece. We do have this slight type of raised panel there. So here, using the studio lights to kind of show this off, we have the mold line here. So this is kind of where the mold connects for this actual runner itself. So you'll want to either sand that flat or use, I've seen people have good success with these with like a hobby knife, but sanding is usually better. I just think it's kind of interesting how it kind of steps downwards throughout the actual piece itself. That is pretty interesting. Over here we have some back thruster pieces with some nice panel lining on the front there, with this raised panel there and there. The panel lining does go off to the side there, and despite probably not being seen, we do have some nice interior detailing there with this truss framing on the inside. Looks like there's a sort of sliding gimmick, so I do believe these sit on the backpack, and then as it transforms, this will slide down and kind of cover the butt. Down here we have some armor flaps, so this piece is the interior of this piece, and we do have some panel lining on the top there and in this little recessed area. And then here we have a wing flap which is attached to the shield. The rest of the runner is pretty uninteresting, just some random connection pieces here, a hose up here, and then another hose down here with random thruster and probably beam emitter barrel type bits. I do get a kick out of this interior detail here because there's absolutely no way we're going to see it, but it's nice that it's there. And if you paint it, then you know it's going to be there. I know some people like to find that type of task pointless, but sometimes I do like going a little over detailed with my builds, and if I'm in the right state of mind, painting all that would be a fun task for me. A pretty low-key runner because all the parts here are very big, very descript, and then all these kind of smaller pieces are a little uninteresting. So let's move on to Runner J. So here we have two Runner Js in this light gray color, and this is all going to be moving type of framing pieces. So this is going to take care of the interior of the leg and the thigh for the transformation type of gimmick. And taking a quick look at these parts, we can see that the surface detail is still expanded on all these parts, similar to the rest of the kit. So it's very consistent with its surface detailing. Lots of raised hatches and panels throughout all these parts. We have these sort of hoses down here for the kneecap area. So this is between the thigh and the knee, this little joint here and here. And then down here with more parts with lots of different joints throughout these parts. And we have raised truss framing throughout most of these parts as well. So this is going to be a very highly detailed sort of pseudo inner frame, if you will, because it's not a full inner frame, but these pieces will probably be seen throughout the transformation. So it's nice that they've added a lot of surface detail to all these parts, so you can see the detail as you transform the kit itself. But this is primarily just all going to be joint pieces for the legs. And down here, we just have articulated joint pieces. So not necessarily inner framing like over here, but just little swivels and things such as that. We have no undergating on the back side, but we do have some interior detailing down here in this type of knee joint area with all these circles throughout. And that's really interesting because usually the sort of truss framing is more angular rather than circular. So that's a cool little design choice there. I do like that a bit, especially because it kind of coincides with this circle right here for the actual knee joint. So here we have runners K1 and K2. K2 is a really small subsect of K1, as we can see here. So we're not going to go over that because K1 has all those pieces on it. So this is just more interior sort of framing for the rest of the kit here. So up here, if I had to guess, this was shoulder armor stuff with the bicep down here. And again, we have some nice raised truss framing where the bicep is going to go. We have some joint pieces down here on the bottom, kind of uninteresting. But down here, we have some framing, which I believe is for the head. So all this raised ridge here is kind of where the sensor is. And here are the eyes itself for the Psycho Gundam. So that's really interesting that we're going to put that black face plate over this and then the actual sensor piece there. So it's really cool that this detail is even molded onto this headpiece itself. That's very interesting. And I assume they did it because on the destroyed version, you can actually fully see the eye. So it just makes sense to do one and do the other in a consistent manner. Over here, we have the back end of the shoulder armors. So these are going to sandwich with those. We have the front chest piece here with some very narrow vent detailing on the front there. It's kind of all the detailing I'm seeing on this piece from the outside. And then here we have some swivel bits. I assume for the shield, this is a very large piece, so I'm going to guess that this is for the shield. And then some more little random tidbits here. We have some sort of thruster back end here. Not a ton of surface detailing on the back side other than this section here with that truss framing there, but that's kind of it. And there is no undergating on this piece either. Here we have two L runners, and this is going to go quick because they are the same. These are molded in that brighter purple. And it's primarily the forearm armor here with these two pieces. So the top and bottom of a forearm. Unfortunately, my parts got a little scuffed in shipping, so that's a little disappointing. Over here we have an armor flap. I'm not necessarily sure where this goes. We have a beam emitter section here, which goes on the end of the shoulder armor. And then we have this small piece down here with this truss framing on the outside. On the back side, we do have some truss framing on that armor flap for wherever that may go. And like the others, there's no undergating. So a very small runner, but a nice looking runner nonetheless. Here we have two M runners. We have M2 on top, which is just a small subsect of M1. And this is just all going to be color separated pieces for the whole kit. So M2 is just this section here. So some thruster pieces, as well as some pieces here for the backpack thruster, where the thruster kind of slides up and down on these red pieces here. We have this front section here for the front of the waist, so the purple piece is going to go over it. And behind it, to give you that color separated red piece down the center. We have these red pieces here for the front cockpit area. These red pieces here for the front skirt. These red pieces here for the upper chest area with a little bit of panel lining detail on those. We have this sort of red cap here, which goes onto the hood, so to speak. We have these two red pieces here. So this is the bottom of the completed head chin, and this is the bottom of the destroyed head chin. You can see where that section is kind of missing there to the right. And then down here in this section for the thrusters, we have this little itty bitty sort of sensor type of part there. A pretty impressive runner. These vents have a ton of panel line detailing within there, so probably something I'm going to use Tamiya on just to fill it in nice and quickly because a pen is going to take forever. And that's one thing I've noticed I've been saying a lot throughout all these unboxing videos is that doing any of these newer kits with a pen is going to take a very, very long time. So if that's your preferred method of panel lining, you are going to be a very busy person. The final two runners for the main build of the Psycho Gundam Mark II is N1 on top and N2 on the bottom. All that's different with N1 and N2 is N2 has this small section here that's new, and N2 has this small section up here that's new. So we're going to look at these pieces for N1, and then we'll look at all of N2. So this section down here for N1 is primarily just color separated pieces. So this yellow piece right here, we see all these ridges throughout the circumference of this piece. This is just going to be a beam emitter for the front waist area. This is a color separated piece for the tip of the hood. You can see this kind of raised lip here, and that's where the purple pieces sandwich over it. And then down here we have a color separated piece for the front waist as well. So this is going to go underneath that red piece for the front waist. There's a lot of different colors here all playing with one another, so it's nice that it's color separated. Switching over to N2, the rest of these pieces are more color separated pieces. So these pieces here go on the leg themselves, and there's a little bit of panel lining there. These pieces here are for either side of the foot because there's like a little tiny yellow piece at the bottom of the foot. And then this piece here is for the top of the foot. So kind of on that, I believe, G runner, this is that yellow piece that goes on the top of the main foot itself, and then that other kind of cap goes over this and covers this in purple. Down here we just have more thrusters. I believe these are thrusters because there are details around them. They're not just a big hole. So I believe if they're a big hole similar to this one, then it is going to be a beam emitter. Have some very small yellow pieces here. I bet these go somewhere on the face. And then just a little bit more color separated pieces here, all with some very nice panel line detailing, some nice hatches on these yellow pieces. On the back side, we do have some interior detailing for these thrusters here. You can see all those little lines within those thrusters. Same with up there. And like the rest of the kit, there's no undergating on N1 or N2. So for added accessories, we have 3 bases for an action base with the connectors, which is paramount because they want you to use the connectors to actually hold this thing up. We have the arm tree for the action base 4. So we have this big arm here that's going to hold the actual Psycho Gundam up. I assume these other smaller arms are going to hold up the reflector bits. We do have 2 BA-16 runners. Again, these are also for the reflector bits. You can kind of have 2 large tree sections for the reflector bits to stick onto, so it's nice that you're going to be able to display the Psycho Gundam Mark II with its full displayed loadout, similar to the Destroy Gundam, how we got all those beam effect parts for the actual Destroy Gundam. We have 6 Beam Saber 13 runners, nothing really crazy. We saw these on the Destroy Gundam from last year. And then here we have 2 SB11 Beam Saber effect pieces. I'm not sure what these go for. There's like a square adapter, so I want to say something kind of 00-ish, if that makes sense. This might be like a Beam Saber for like a 00 riser. I'm not necessarily sure. I have not seen this runner before, so this is a first for me. But the square end really makes me think it's something 00, 2009, so who knows. So what these are for the Beam Saber on the Psycho Gundam Mark II, so the hand can kind of like collapse and then the blade comes out of its wrist itself. So it's cool that these were included. The last remaining accessories, we have 2 wires here, 2 kind of long, very moldable wires, so that's nice because I know sometimes these wires aren't the most movable things and sometimes they don't always hold the position, so it's kind of nice that these are movable and will hold the position. And what everyone else likes to see, we have a small sticker sheet. So we have the eyes here for the complete head and the destroyed head, but like I said, the eyes are color separated, so you may not even want to use these. You may find the effect to be sufficient enough with just the color separated pieces. And then the rest of these are just black pieces for the interior of the beam emitters throughout the body, which you could very easily just take a panel liner pen and color in yourself. And that's exactly what I'm going to do with these stickers. I'm not going to use these stickers. I'm just going to fill in with the pen and call it a day. Taking a look at the art here, it looks very color separated out of the box. So there's really not going to be a lot of paint that we need to do on this kit itself. It looks very, very good directly out of the box. Like I said, one of the areas you might want to touch up is the emitters for the reflector bit, just because the little flaps on them are supposed to be gray and it's all molded in purple. And here we can see the arms are going to be put on the end of those wires as sort of like an incom. and we see that big beam saber blade there. Here we can see it in its mobile fortress mode, which is super goofy. This is a transformation I despise, to be completely honest with you. I don't see a whole lot of utility in the mobile fortress mode. That's just my opinion on it. If you like it, then I'm happy that you're able to appreciate it, where I'm not able to as much. And then we can just see more features throughout the kit itself. That's going to do it for the unboxing of the Psycho Gundam Mark II. I really hope you enjoyed unboxing this kit and going over the runners with me. This looks like a very exciting large scale 1/144 scale Gundam. So this is going to sit about the same size as like a perfect grade RX-78-2 if you haven't built one before. So that's kind of what the scale is of this. This shouldn't be too much bigger than the actual Psycho Gundam itself. They're basically almost in the same size. I really enjoy how Bandai's been giving us bigger kits every spring. Last year it was the Destroy Gundam, before that it was the Nightingale, and before that was the Penelope. So this year we have the Psycho Gundam Mark II, so I'm really kind of hoping, my fingers are really crossed, although it's kind of a Hail Mary, I'm really hoping next year we kind of get a Dark Gundam like the Ultimate Gundam, where it's got that big kind of like all those legs and stuff. I think that would be really interesting to see in the high grade form. Putting that to the side, the Psycho Gundam Mark II looks like a very exciting build. I can't wait to get this snapped up and reviewed on the channel, and that's going to be coming very soon. As always, I got to give a huge shout out to all my subscribers for subscribing to the channel, liking, and commenting. Your support means the world to me. And we wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for the people like you, so thank you so much for tuning in to Joe's Gunpla Garage. Until the next video, remember to stay safe, have fun, and happy building.